Lesson 6-5, Proportions and Percents. So in our last lesson, we talked about fractions, decimals, and percents and how to convert from one to the other. I like to call this lesson percent problems. We're going to look at types of problems that involve percents, and you're going to be able to solve them. So here's an example of a real-life problem you could encounter that deals with percents. Janie made a fruit cake using bananas and apples. 40% of the fruits that she used were bananas. If she used a total of 120 fruits, how many bananas did she use? So you know a couple things. We know the total amount of fruit she used. We call that the whole, okay, of our problem. 120 was the total amount of fruit. We also know a percent. She told us that 40% of the fruit she used were bananas. Now, in these types of problems, you're always missing one of these three. In this case, we're missing the part. We don't know how many of this 120 pieces of fruit were bananas. We don't know the part. That's what we're trying to find. How many bananas did she use? Well, there's a formula that we can use to solve these percent problems. You're going to want to make sure you write this down in your notes. We're going to be using it lots and lots. Is over of equals percent 100. And then underneath, I'm going to write it again, but I'm going to use different words. Part over whole equals percent 100. Now notice, there are two ratios set equal to each other. This is a proportion. So we can use percent proportions to solve these problems. So if you remember from the problem we just talked about, we don't know what part we're looking for. But we do know that the whole amount was 120 pieces of fruit. We also know that she used 40% bananas. So I put a 40 in for that percent. And it's always over 100. Percents are over 100. So my proportion looks like this. X over 120 equals 40 over 100. Well, this is a proportion that I know how to solve. If I cross multiply, get my calculator, 120 times 40 is 4,800, and 100 times x is 100x. Divide by 100 to both sides, x equals 48. This is the x we were looking for, which is the part. So if I go back, out of the 120 pieces of fruit, she used 48 bananas. Okay, so that's a percent problem. So we're going to use this formula for all of these types of problems. Here's another way that you might see a percent problem. What is 25% of the number 34? Okay, when you see something like this, we can use this formula to fill in what we know. What is 25%? As soon as you see a percent, that's what goes over the percent part. So 25 is going to go on top, always over 100. Of 34, it's attached to the word of. There's our of. 34 is on bottom. What is? Notice there's the question. We don't know the is, so that's our x. So this looks like is over of equals percent 100. Now I just cross multiply 34 times 25, 850. Divide by 100 is 8.5. So of the number 34, 25% of that number is 8.5. Here's another percent problem. Let's see if we can fill in the formula. What percent of 84 is 62? All right, let's look for those words. Of 84. Of goes on bottom. So of my proportion, 84 goes on bottom. Is 62. Is on top. So 62 goes on top. Our equation always has 100. And then notice what they're asking us is the percent. We don't know the percent. So I cross multiply. 62 times 100 is 6,200. Divide by 84. Looks like I get a decimal, so I'm just going to round this one. 73.8, about. So 62 is about 73.8% of 84. So if you're solving for a percent, you need a percent sign. Okay, so in the last problem we were looking for the is, then we just solved one and we were looking for the percent. Here's one where we're probably solving for the of. 99 is 22% of what number? So you need to be able to read these problems and put them into this formula. 99 is, well, 99 is on top. 22%, when you see the percent sign, that's a giveaway to put it on top of 100. Notice they're saying of what number? We don't know the of. So if I set up my proportion, 99 over x equals 22 over 100. 99 cross multiply times 100 and 22 times x. So 9,900 divided by 22, 450 is our of. Okay, so let's just practice a couple of these. Find 65% of 245. You want to think of your percent proportion and then look and see if you know where to fill in the numbers. Well, 65% goes over 100. Of 245, of is always on bottom. So we're obviously looking for our is. Cross multiply, 100x equals 245 times 65, 15925. Divide both sides by 100, and I get 159.25. Simple as that. So in this one, notice if you're solving for the is, that's like solving for the part of a whole. Okay? So we'll use both terminologies. All right, what about this one? What percent? Okay, right away I know what the question is. I don't know the percent, and I always have 100. Of 62, of 60, that goes on bottom, is 52, that goes on top. Part and whole. Cross multiply. So this is an x if I don't know it. 5,200 divided by 60. X equals 86. 0.6 repeating, which we know is 2/3. Since you are finding a percent, you cannot forget your percent sign. And a third example. 207 is, stop right there, that's our part, so that goes on top. 46%, that goes over 100, of what number? We don't know the of, we don't know the whole amount. Okay, multiply across, 46x equals 20700, divided by 46, x equals 450. Okay, now we're going to do an example with a real-life problem. In 2005, the number of drive-in movie screens in the United States was about 84% of the number in 1995. About how many drive-in screens were there in 1995? Okay, so this is a percent problem, so I have my proportion, and 100 is always on the bottom. They gave us the percent, 84%, so I put that over 100. So in 2005, the number of drive-in movie screens was 84% of the number in 1995. Well, notice if I look at the number in 1995, I don't know the number. So since it's of, that's the number I don't know. So in 2005, that number is our part. So I'm going to look at my chart, 2005, 709 goes on top. Part, whole, percent, 100. I just solve it as normal. 84x equals 70900. Divide by 84. I'm going to round because it says about. So it was about 844 screens. So there I just used my formula with a real life problem. All right, so in summary, with percents and proportions or percent problems, sometimes we're finding the percent, sometimes we're finding the part, which is the is. Make sure you have that in your notes. And sometimes we're finding the whole, which is the of. Okay? So as long as you can use our is over of equals percent over 100, you should be able to solve these proportions.